The strange box from the stars. Jace was just finishing his late shift when the alarm buzzed at the outer gate. He looked up from his tools, confused because no ships were scheduled to land tonight. The screen blinked with a code Solori Royal. Transport marked with a red royal symbol. His heart sank. Because nothing good ever came with that symbol. He grabbed his jacket and headed out into the cold desert night. The twin moons hanging low in the sky. The transport was small and black. Not even bothering to hide. Two guards in golden armor carried a long, sealed container from the ship's cargo hold. They walked past Jace without saying a word and placed the container right at his door. Before he could speak, the guards turned and marched back into their ship. In seconds, the transport lifted into the night sky and disappeared without a trace. Jace stared at the box left behind, confused and slightly nervous. It looked expensive, lined with gold edges and glowing with soft purple lights. There was no screen, no buttons, only one carved emblem, the symbol of the Zalori King. A scroll lay, taped to the top, written in flowing alien script with a small translation beneath. To the brave human who saved my son's life on Aratha. 4. Accept this gift of deepest gratitude. May she serve you well. Jace's blood turned cold as he read the last line. He slowly unlatched the container and lifted the lid with caution. Inside, curled in a fetal position, was a girl, not a robot. Not a clone, but a real alien girl. She was small and thin, with pale violet skin and long silver hair that covered part of her face. Her arms were bound gently with soft rope, and she didn't move. She looked barely awake, her eyes glassy, her breathing soft and shallow. Jace stepped back in shock, unsure if he was looking at someone drugged or deeply hurt. "Hey, can you hear me?" he whispered, his voice gentle. The girl blinked slowly, but didn't answer, only looking at him with wide, frightened eyes. There was no weapon. No warning, just her, lying there like a thing delivered from the stars. He couldn't leave her like that. Jace quickly carried the box inside his small home and carefully lifted her out. Her body was cold, and she flinched at every touch. He wrapped her in a soft blanket and placed her gently on his couch. She didn't speak, only stared at the wall as if her soul had already left. Jace sat across from her, the note still shaking in his hands. The king had given him a slava, living, breathing girls, if she were an object. But Jace was no royal, no warrior, and definitely no master. He was just a mechanic who once pulled a Zalori prince out of a crashed ship he never asked for a reward, especially not this. The girl made a soft sound, a low whimper, then closed her eyes tightly. She hugged herself, shivering, as if afraid he might hurt her. Jace stood up slowly and backed away, trying to show her he meant no harm. "I'm not going to touch you," he said softly. "You're safe here." Still, she didn't speak. That night, Jace left her with warm water and some food on a tray. He slept on the floor beside the door, keeping his distance, but he couldn't sleep. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw her frightened face staring up from that golden box. What kind of monster sends a person in a container like cargo? He knew the Zalor called it honor, but to him, it felt more like cruelty in the middle of the night. He woke up to a sound, soft footsteps near the kitchen. He looked up quietly and saw her drinking water. Slowly and carefully, she noticed him watching but didn't run. Instead, she walked back to the couch, sat down, and covered herself with a blanket before lying down. She turned her head toward him and whispered something. It was one word, soft and barely clear through her trembling voice. "Valina," she said, then closed her eyes again. Jace blinked in surprise. At least now, she had a name, and tomorrow he would begin to find out who she really was. Because no one, no matter what planet they came from, deserved to be treated like this. Not in his home, not under his care, not ever. She won't speak, but her eyes beg for help. Morning light slipped gently through the dusty window. Jace sat on the edge of the chair, staring at the girl still curled up under the blanket. Valina hadn't moved much during the night, only once to drink water and whisper her name. That one word had stayed with him, circling in his mind like a quiet storm. Valina. She was awake now, her eyes half open. Watching him from beneath the blanket, not a single word came from her lips. But her eyes told him everything: fear, hurt, and something deeper, like a question she didn't dare ask. Jace didn't want to scare her, so he sat still and spoke softly, like one would speak to a wounded animal. "You're safe here," he said. "I won't hurt you." She blinked, slowly, but said nothing. He tried again. "Do you want food or water?" Still no answer. Just her watching, silent and alert. He brought her a plate with simple bread, warm broth, and some fruit. He placed it on a small table near the couch, then stepped back. For a long time, she didn't move. Then, like a shadow, unsure of its own shape, she sat up slowly and looked at the food. Her hands trembled as she picked up the spoon. She ate, but only a little, and only when he wasn't looking directly at her. Jace pretended to busy himself, fixing a panel in the wall, but his eyes kept drifting back to her. She was so thin, like she hadn't eaten well in weeks. And she flinched every time she heard a loud sound or a sudden movement. Even the hum of his repair tool made her clutch the blanket tighter. Later that day, he brought her a pair of soft clothes, not armor or uniforms, but warm cotton. She stared at them for a long moment, confused. Then, slowly, she reached out and pulled them close, hugging them like a child would a toy. She didn't speak. But Jace saw a tear roll down her cheek. He didn't ask why. He already knew. That night, she didn't sleep. Jace heard her sitting by the window, hugging her knees to her chest. He quietly walked over and sat on the floor nearby. "Can I tell you something?" he asked gently. She didn't reply, but her eyes turned toward him, waiting. "I didn't know the king would send someone like you," he whispered. "I thought it would be a medal, maybe a few credits, not this." Valina didn't blink, but her breathing grew slower, like she was listening deeply. "I don't want a slave," he said. "That's not who I am." She blinked once, then looked away, but for the first time, Jace saw something shift in her face. Not fear, not pain, but confusion. As if no one had ever said those words to her before. The next morning, he woke to find her sitting at the kitchen table. She had cleaned her plate and folded the blanket neatly. When he entered, she stood up quickly, almost like a soldier awaiting orders. Jace raised his hands. "You don't need to do that," he said. "You're not here to serve me." Valina tilted her head, unsure. He smiled softly and motioned for her to sit again. After a moment, she did, slowly and carefully. That day, he showed her the small garden behind his house. She followed him quietly, eyes wide with wonder as she saw real green plants. He handed her a small flower, and she held it like it was the most precious thing in the galaxy. For a second, she looked up and met his eyes. She didn't speak, but her lips moved slightly, trying to form something. A thank you, maybe, but the words were trapped inside. Later that evening, she sat near the old fireplace, holding a small stone she had taken from the box. Jace watched her fingers trace its surface, over and over, like it held memories no one else could see. He walked over and asked gently, "Does it mean something to you?" She looked up, eyes wet, and nodded once. "Home," she whispered. It was the second word he had ever heard from her. Jace nodded, sitting beside her. "We'll find a new one," he said. Together, Valina didn't answer, but she leaned just a little closer to him. And for the first time, she didn't flinch when he handed her a warm mug of tea. That night, she didn't sleep on the couch. She made herself a small bed beside the fireplace, close to the warmth. She still didn't speak much, but her silence was softer now. And when she looked at Jace, there was less fear, more wondering, more trust. She didn't need words to say it. Her eyes were slowly learning the language of safety. And Jace promised himself, no matter what came next, he would protect that look forever. The king's real motive revealed 3 days passed quietly. Valentina was still silent most of the time, but she no longer jumped at small sounds. She helped in the garden, followed Jace to the market, and even smiled once just a little. She never asked questions, never demanded anything. But Jace could see it in her eyes. She was waiting, watching, like she expected something to go wrong. And then, it did. One evening, just as Jace was closing his workshop, a message arrived. It came through an old channel, one rarely used anymore. Encrypted and marked urgent, the message bore a crest he didn't recognize. Curious and cautious, he opened it. A woman appeared on the screen, dressed in silver robes with sharp blue eyes. "Human named Jace," she said, her voice low and firm. "You do not know me, but I know you. I am Lady Renha of the Zalari High Court. I was once tutor to Princess Valentina." Jace froze, his hands gripping the console tightly. Princess. The word echoed in his ears like a whisper from the stars. Valentina was not just a gift, she was royalty. Lady Renha continued, her voice tinged with quiet anger. "She is not a servant," she said. "She is the king's blood, his brother's daughter. She vanished after her father was falsely accused of treason and executed." Jace's heart dropped. The king did not want her dead, not openly, Renha added, so he made her disappear, quietly. She was declared unfit for royal duty and sold into private shadows. Jace felt sick. He looked across the room where Valentina sat curled up in the corner, reading a children's book. She didn't know he had found out, or maybe she did. Dan was just waiting for the moment he'd send her back. Renha's voice returned. "She is not safe," she warned. "The king thinks you are too far, too low in rank, to make trouble. But if she becomes visible, if she speaks to the wrong person, he will send someone to erase her. You must decide now." "Human," Renha said. "Hide her forever, or help her reclaim what is hers." The screen went black. That night, Jace couldn't sleep. He stared at the ceiling, mind racing. He had thought he was doing a kind thing, giving a scared girl warmth and food. But this wasn't kindness anymore. It was survival. In the early morning light, he found Valentina sitting outside, her bare feet touching the cold sand. He sat beside her without a word. After a long silence, he spoke. "Is it true?" He asked gently. "You're the king's niece." Valentina didn't move. Her eyes stayed on the horizon, glowing pink with the rising sun. Then she nodded. "Once, very slowly, I was." She whispered, "But not anymore." He waited, letting her speak in her own time. "They said I asked questions." She said, her voice soft like a dream. "My father taught me to read council records. I found things I wasn't supposed to see." She looked down at her hands. "I told thee?" "Wrong person." Her fingers dug into the sand, trembling. "My father died," she said. "And they told me I was cursed." Jace didn't speak. He simply reached out and placed his hand over hers. She looked at him then, truly looked, not as a servant or a broken thing, but as a girl carrying too much pain in a heart too small to hold it all. "I'm not sending you back," he said quietly. Her eyes widened. "You're not mine," he added. "Ah. And you're not theirs. You're your own." Valentina stared at him, her lips trembling like she wanted to speak, but couldn't. Finally, she nodded again, more firmly this time. "Then I will not hide anymore," she said, her voice stronger. "I will live." From that day, things changed. Valentina stopped looking over her shoulder. She walked taller, laughed more, asked questions again. Jace taught her how to fix things, old machines, drones, data pads. She was smart to smart and quick with her hands. But at night, she still held that small stone from her box. The last piece of home. Jace knew the king would not forget, and when he came, it would not be gentle. But now, he wasn't just protecting a girl. He was protecting something greater: truth, and a future that had once been stolen. Together, they began, planning not to run, but to stand. Teaching her freedom, Velina stood barefoot in the soft dirt of the garden. The morning sun warmed her skin, and the scent of new flowers floated gently in the air. She held a small spade in one hand, unsure how to use it. Jace watched from the porch. Sipping from a metal cup, he didn't speak, just nodded slowly. When she glanced at him, she bent down and tried to plant a seed, her hands clumsy but careful. The soil slipped through her fingers like dust, but she didn't give up after a few tries. The seed sat in its little home, and she patted the dirt softly. It was her first attempt, and it wasn't perfect, but it was hers. Jace clapped gently, and she looked up, surprised. "You did great," he said. Velina gave a tiny smile, barely visible, but real. It was the smile of someone who had never been praised for anything, and now, for the first time, felt proud of something small. Later that day, Jace handed her a small data tablet. "Want to learn music?" he asked. She hesitated, fingers hovering over the screen. Then she nodded slowly. Her first notes were clumsy, strange sounds bouncing through the room, but soon she found a rhythm, soft and haunting. Her eyes glowed as the melody grew under her fingertips. "Why do I feel this?" she asked one night, her voice barely above a whisper. "This warm thing inside," Jace smiled. "That's called peace," he said. "You're safe now." She didn't answer, but she pressed a hand to her chest, like trying to hold that warmth in place. Every day she learned something new. She learned to fix broken lights, cook stew from scratch, and mend torn cloth. Each task made her feel stronger, more alive, more real. Jace taught her how to speak Earth languages slowly. Word by word. She was shy at first, afraid of making mistakes, but Jace never laughed. He just waited patiently until she got the words right. One day, when she finally said thank you in perfect Earth English, he smiled so wide she couldn't help but laugh. That laugh echoed through the house, and it was the most beautiful sound he had ever heard. They started going to the nearby colony market together. At first, Velina wore a hood and kept her head low. But after a week, she lifted her chin and met people's eyes. Most stared, some whispered, but no one dared to harm her, not when Jace walked beside her, firm and calm. She helped build a small library corner for children in the town square. The little ones loved her silver hair and gentle voice. She taught them to play music and how to draw stars. Some parents frowned at first, unsure about an alien teaching their kids, but when they saw their children smile, they stopped complaining. Velina was changing, not into something new, but into who she had always been before fear took everything. Jace never forced her, never asked more than she could give. He simply gave her the space to grow, and she bloomed. One night, while sitting under the stars, Velina asked softly, "Do you think broken things can become whole again?" Jace looked at her for a long moment before answering. "Sometimes," he said. "Broken things become something even stronger." Velina nodded, her eyes shining. "I want to be that," she said. She began to sleep better. The nightmares faded slowly, replaced by dreams of green fields and quiet laughter. She started drawing pictures of birds, of the galaxy, of strange creatures with wings. Hush! Jace put her drawings on the wall, proud like a father would be. Then one day something happened. They were walking through the colony when a merchant stepped into their path. He looked Velina up and down and muttered, "Royal trash," before Jace could speak. Velina stepped forward and looked him straight in the eye. "I am not trash," she said, her voice clear and calm. "I am free." The man blinked, shocked, and backed away. Jace stared at her in silence, his heart thudding. "You said that like a queen," he whispered. Valina turned to him and smiled. I'm learning, she said. That night, by the fire. Jace did something symbolic. He brought out the royal seal that had been sent with her box, the golden emblem of her slavery. He held it over the flame, and without a word, dropped it in. The metal twisted and melted into ash. Valina didn't cry. She simply stood beside him and placed her hand in his. No words were needed. That act was enough. But outside their home, in the cold night air, two silent shadows watched from the trees, and one of them whispered into a communicator. We've found her. The royal hunters arrived. The days grew quieter. Valina smiled more, laughed more, and began helping Jace teach local children how. To fix small machines, she braided her silver hair and walked proudly beside Jace to the market. People no longer whispered in fear. They nodded in respect, but far above the colony. In the darkness between stars, something stirred. A black ship broke from stealth near the planet's orbit. Sleek and deadly, with no markings. It was not a cargo ship, and it brought no peace inside. Two Zolari purifiers stood before a glowing screen. Target confirmed. One said, his voice hollow and sharp. Royal signature active, said the other, tapping into old imperial records. She has not been erased. King's orders. Capture if silent, kill if seen. The ship slipped into the lower atmosphere without warning. No lights, no beacons, no questions. The purifiers walked out into the desert. Tall, armored, silent. They had no names. Only code numbers burned into their metal collars. In the colony, no one noticed them at first. They wore long robes to hide their armor and carried silent darts instead of blasters. They watched from corners, never speaking, never blinking. One stood by the bakery, pretending to admire fruit. The other hid in shadows near Jace's workshop. Valina felt it before anyone said anything. That old coldness returned to her chest. Like invisible hands pressing against her lungs, she stood still in the market, eyes narrowing. Someone's. Here, she whispered. Jace turned toward her, confused. What do you mean? But she was already walking, scanning faces in the crowd. She knew those movements, those patterns. She had been hunted before. That night, Jace locked every door and checked the roof access. He armed old drones with motion alerts and silent alarms. He kept a blaster near his bed, even though he hated using weapons. Valina didn't sleep. She sat by the window, watching the trees, her stone held tightly in her hands. At 3 a.m., a silent alarm pinged. Jace shot up from the floor and ran to the screen. One of the garden sensors had triggered something moved near the back wall. Valina stood all ready. Wide awake. They're here, she whispered. Her voice wasn't afraid. It was ready. Jace opened a hidden compartment under the kitchen floor. Inside was an old tunnel from colony construction days. Go, he said. Valina looked at him, frozen. I won't leave you, she whispered. You're not, he replied. We'll meet at the safe house. She hesitated, then nodded, and disappeared down the tunnel just seconds later. The door shattered with a silent charge. Two dark figures stepped through the smoke. Their weapons hummed softly, deadly but quiet. Jace stood alone in the hallway, blocking the tunnel hatch. You can't have her, he said. One purifier raised a weapon. Human, step aside. I saved your prince. Jace growled. And you repaid me by sending her in a box. You should have left her there, the purifier replied coldly. Jace pressed a button on his wrist. The entire house flickered. Walls dropped. Flashbangs burst from the ceiling and drones swarmed in for 10 seconds. The entire room was white chaos. By the time the smoke cleared, Jace was gone. So was Valina. The purifiers regrouped, scanning for escape paths. One of them growled. She's smarter than before. The other tapped his communicator. Alert the ship, he said. They've gone underground, at the edge of the colony. Deep in the old mining sector, Valina and Jace huddled in a forgotten safe house beneath the rocks. She was shaking, not from fear, but from memory. "This is how they came before," she whispered. "My father tried to hide me in tunnels like this." Jace wrapped a blanket around her shoulders. "This time," he said, "you're not alone." Valina looked up at him, her eyes fierce beneath the tears. "I won't run forever," she said. Jace nodded slowly. "I'll help you stand." Outside, the purifiers spread across the colony. They questioned locals, searched buildings, tapped into old records, but no one helped them. The colony had seen what Valina had become: free, kind, strong, and no one wanted to see that crushed. One elder even lied to their faces. "She left weeks ago," he said, smiling through his teeth. "Funny thing though," she said, "humans treated her better than her own kind." The purifiers left with empty hands, but their message was sent to the king. "Target escaped," they wrote. "Human support confirmed." The king's reply was short: "Prepare more hunters." And so, while Valina rested her head on Jace's shoulder beneath layers of stone, a new danger moved through the stars. More silent, more deadly, and far less patient. A human's fury against a Jace wasn't born a fighter. He built machines, fixed engines, and avoided trouble. But now, sitting in a dark cave beside a hunted alien girl, he felt something new in his chest. Not fear, but fire. Valina slept beside him, wrapped in worn blankets, her breathing slow. He watched her carefully. Seeing the bruise on her wrist from the purifier's dart, that bruise wasn't just a mark. On her skin it was a mark on his soul. They came into his home, broke down his door, and tried to take her like she was still an object. They failed, but they would return, and next time, Jace swore he would be ready. The next morning, he met with people he once avoided: smugglers, retired soldiers, old tech scavengers, men and women who had lived on the edge of the galaxy. Some owed him favors, others just hated the royal family. He gathered data, codes, and black market tools, and more importantly, stories. "Do you know how many children the king erased?" One woman whispered. "Do you know how many gifts he gave? Just like her." Jace clenched his jaw. No more, he thought. Not her. Back in the cave, Valina helped set up defenses. She didn't ask to be hidden anymore. Instead, she learned how to trip sensors,
jam signals,
and reprogram drones. Jace taught her how to fire a pulse rifle. She hated holding it, but didn't hesitate when aiming. "I won't be helpless again," she said. Then, one night, something changed. A coded message reached their hidden relay system. It was Lady Renhada, same noble who had once warned them. Her face appeared, pale and grim. "You must listen," she said. "The king knows she lives. He has declared Valina a threat to the throne. He has ordered her death under royal law, secret, final, and absolute. The only way to protect her now is to expose the truth." Valina stepped forward into the light of the hala. "Then help me," she said. "Help me reach the throne world." Jace turned to her in shock. "That's suicide," he said. But Valina's eyes burned like stars. "They will never stop chasing me," she said. "I will stop running." Jace nodded slowly. "If we go," he said, "we hit them hard, not with guns first, but with proof." They began preparing. Lady Renha sent data packets, records hidden in old vaults, showing Valina's true birthright, evidence of royal lies, secret slave trades, falsified documents. It was all there, everything the king tried to bury. Jace modified an old mining freighter, painting over the markings. They named it Free Wind, a ship without chains, without flags, only a mission. Before leaving, they sent warnings to the colony. "Stay safe," Jace told his neighbors. "We're taking the storm with us." The journey to the throne world was slow and dangerous. Every checkpoint was a risk. Every scan a moment of held breath. They used fake IDs, cloaking systems, and silent engines. Valina spent most of her time staring at the stars. "I was born among these," she whispered. "And they nearly buried me here." Jace watched her from the pilot seat. She had changed so much from a silent girl in a box to a warrior with a fire in her voice. He felt proud and afraid. As they neared the capital, a patrol ship hailed them. "State your purpose." The voice barked. Jace hit the comms. "Medical transport supplies and scans." Silence. Then, "Proceed." They passed through. Hearts pounding, the throne world loomed like a diamond wrapped in clouds. Tall towers, glowing rings of light. Guards in gold armor. Valina looked at it with hard eyes. "I used to call that place home," she whispered. "Now I return as its reckoning." They landed in a forgotten spaceport outside the central city. Lady Renha met them in secret, bringing disguises and a new plan. "There's a council meeting tomorrow," she said. "If she walks into that room with this evidence, the whole empire will know." Jace frowned. "And the king?" "He will try to stop it," Renha said. "He may even kill openly." Valina didn't blink. "Let him try," she said. That night, Jace sat alone on the ship, cleaning his tools and checking systems. Valina walked in, wearing her disguise-long black robes with silver threads. "You ready?" he asked. She nodded. Then she placed something on the table. The small stone from her old box. "Whatever happens," she said, "I've already found my freedom." Jace reached across the table and took her hand. "Then let's fight for others to have the same." Outside, the throne world glittered like a lie made of diamonds. But this time, it would not be the king's day. It would be hers. From slave to sovereign, the throne world's capital was silent before the storm. Guards in gold marched through marble streets, unaware of what walked among them in a long robe. With silver threads, Valina moved past the gates with her hood low. Jace walked beside her, dressed like a tech servant, holding a small black case filled with truth. They passed under tall banners of the king, his face painted proud, powerful, untouchable, but none of the banners showed the truth. None showed what he had done to his own blood. None showed the girl he threw away in a golden box. The grand hall of the council sat like a temple at the center of the city. Its doors opened only once a moon cycle, and today, those doors would open for justice. Inside, nobles gathered, old faces, cold hearts. They spoke of trade, of planets, of peace and power. The king sat high on his throne, his voice calm, but his eyes scanned the room. Restless, he knew she might come. Then the doors opened again, and silence followed. Valina stepped forward, her head held high, her voice low but firm. "I am Valina of House Tyvar," she said. "Daughter of the late Prince Kale." Gasps spread like fire across the hall. The king rose from his seat, face tight with rage. "She is an imposter," he shouted. A liar fed by rebels. Valina did not flinch. She turned to the council and opened the black case. Inside were data crystals, glowing blue royal birth records, trial documents, hidden orders. One crystal showed a private message signed by the king. "Dispose of her quietly," it read. "Make her disappear." The council shifted in their seats. The room no longer breathed. Jace stepped forward and placed a final item on the podium. It was the golden seal, the melted symbol of her slavery. "This was sent with her," Jace said. "A gift to a human." Gasps turned to anger. The old noblewoman Renha stood slowly. "I confirm her identity," she said. "I raised her," one counselor shouted. "This is treason." "No," Valina replied. "This is truth." And then she pulled back her hood. The hall stared. Her silver hair fell around her shoulders, her violet skin glowing. Under the highlights, she was not weak, not broken, not a girl in a box. She was aflame. The king drew a small blade from his robe and stepped toward her. "If you take one more step," he hissed, "I will erase you myself." But Valina, "Stood still. I am not yours to erase," she said. Then, one of the guards moved, not toward her, but in front of her. Another followed. Then another. The king froze. The royal guards no longer obeyed him. They had chosen her. In that moment, everything crumbled. The council declared him unfit to rule. He screamed as he was dragged from the chamber. His crown clattered to the floor. Velina stood in the silence, and the people began to kneel, but she raised a hand. "No more kneeling," she said. "No more chains. Later, in the private chambers." Velina removed her robe and stared at her reflection. Jace stood behind her, quiet, watching her gently trace the old scars on her wrist. "I'm free," she whispered, "but it still feels like a dream." "It's real," Jace said. "You made it real." She turned and looked at him. "You helped me learn how to walk again," she said. "You reminded me I was not made to crawl." Jace smiled, but his voice cracked. "So, what now?" he asked. Velina stepped close and placed her hand over his. "Now, we build a galaxy where no one gets gifted in a box," she said. "Not ever again." Years passed. Velina never took the crown. She formed a council of voices from many worlds. She became a symbol not of royalty, but of rebirth. Jace stayed beside her, always quiet, always steady. He fixed machines, taught kids, and told stories of the girl who rose from silence. Sometimes, when the stars were bright, Velina would sit by the window and hum a tune she once played on Jace's tablet. A tune made of pain, survival, and hope. And in the heart of the city stood a statue, not of a warrior, not of a queen, but of a girl holding a stone in one hand and a broken seal in the other. The plaque read only one word: free.